All right, everyone. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jason Levine. Thank you so much for joining me for today's Friday Masterclass, where today is part 6 of Premiere Pro Basics, working with color. So we're going to be taking a deep dive into all things Lumetri Color. And if you've not played around with color in Premiere Pro recently, this should be a pretty good primer for you. This is really kind of a getting started, but we're going to dip into some little cool techniques and some tips and tricks along the way. So just to kind of give you an idea of what we're talking about today, we're going to talk about the Lumetri Color Panel as a whole, focusing specifically today on the white balance eyedropper, and also kind of relating a lot of the functions of Lumetri to the Develop module in Lightroom. So if you've ever worked to color process images in Lightroom, you've watched Terry do it a million times. Well, the basic section of the Lumetri Color Panel was actually taken from Lightroom in spirit. It's slightly different functionality under the hood, but the concepts are the same, the sliders are the same. And if you know how to do them on stills, you can do it on video. So we're really going to focus on that. Input LUTs, and again, the basic corrections tab, creative LUTs and looks, and these are a whole series of different filters that we have inside of Premiere Pro already that you can apply to your footage, including some film stock emulations that are really wonderful. Some masking and tracking. So again, something we've shown many times on stream here, but a lot of people are unaware of. You can actually track motion in Premiere, mask something, and then use that method for different types of secondary or primary color corrections. We're going to talk about that. Selective color curves, which were a feature that we introduced a couple of years ago for doing things like adjusting overall saturation of particular hues or changing hues within a particular video. And lastly, just kind of showcasing the vignette, which is something which people still use a lot. It's now part of Lumetri. It used to be, there were a couple of third-party creators that made vignettes back in the day. Now, of course, you can just apply them and it works exactly as it does in Lightroom. So as always, coming to you live on a couple of different networks out there. Oh, I was looking, oh, there's my chat. I want to remind everybody that if you want to ping me with live questions, this is the chat that I'm following. So b.net/Adobe Live. That's the one you want to be paying attention to. And let's see, I was having trouble seeing the chats in Behance here. Let's see if it's coming back now. It looks like it is. So hello, Tim, what's up? All right, Steve, Umacore, nice to see you. Muriel. All right, Cody Bear, Rick Adams, Sadiq, Christelle, Varun, great to see you all. Carol Pearl, Jimena Quiroga, got Rira Setyawan and Amir and Danielle. All right, and coming to us over here, Kato Bird, what's up? Nice to see you on the stream today. Narrative VR, hello, Rogelio, Victoria, nice to see you too from Mexico, and Michael Abu Jarur. Okay, so without further ado, why don't we go ahead and let's do it. Let's get into Premiere. All right. Once again, so weird that Stream Deck, you know, I think I need to update this. I need to update Wirecast and the system and move to Big Sur, because these last few Catalina updates have been very strange and stuff's acting weird. And I keep complaining about it, and I still haven't changed it. Good job. Okay, so we're going to start, again, kind of focusing on the Lumetri Color and really top to bottom going through the various modules here. Now, if you don't have the Lumetri Color Panel already open, of course, you can access it from the Color workspace, which you can find under Window Workspace's Color, or you can just independently open up your Lumetri Color Panel from here real easily, all right? So up at the top of the Lumetri Color, now we're going to come back to this layered section right here. This was something that we added a couple of years ago. Just to kind of reveal this real quickly, Lumetri Color allows you to have multiple layers of Lumetri. So you can treat different parts of the image, of the video, separately, independently, whether via masks or using HSL or whatever it is. You have this layered stackable Lumetri ability here via this drop down, which makes it really nice and really easy. All right. But right up at the top, we're in the basic corrections tab. And before we start doing stuff, I just wanted to showcase just what I was discussing before. So if you've worked with Camera Raw or Lightroom, this should look very familiar to you. And all of these sliders should look familiar to you because they're the same ones that you'll see there. And really from top to bottom in basic, we have our white balance eyedropper. All right, we're going to use that in just a second. Temperature and tint, and then under your tone controls, exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. They function exactly the same way theoretically, as you're used to using them in Lightroom, except they're affecting video here. And you should feel really comfortable. You know, I was thinking before I started the stream today, it's only about 10 years ago when I started doing color in Premiere. Prior to that, I used to send all videos to a buddy of mine in Sweden, fellow Adobe colleague. I've mentioned him here on stream, Max Hagelstam. And he's an amazing colorist and just overall great editor and everything else video. And I was just terrified of doing color correction, color grading. And he knew it. So I'd send it off to him and he would do it. Enter, you know, the DSLR boom and getting a lot more into photography and really starting to use more Lightroom and Camera Raw and becoming very familiar with the Develop module. We still didn't have that though in Premiere. Lumetri was still quite a few years away, but it was around 2011 where I just started to dip my feet into, you know, sort of color wheels, you know, understanding highlights, midtones, and shadows a little bit better. Lumetri makes it super easy. Okay, so first and foremost, right at the top here, we have this input LUT section. Now, I just point this out. This is a little on the pro end, but as you can see, this footage that I'm showcasing here, which we've shown before on stream, looks particularly flat, right? It's not saturated. If anything, it's undersaturated. It's not contrasty. If anything, the contrast has been dropped. It's kind of creamy, soft looking. This is typically the way that we shoot video. We shoot it flat, particularly if you're going to be shooting greater than 8-bit video, because the idea being that you're going to add the color back in later. And the flatter it is, the more latitude you have for grading, particularly if you're A, working above 8-bit, and B, working in a place like Premiere Pro where everything is working in a 32-bit float color container, and it's just gonna make your results look a lot better than if you bake all that color in and try to, you know, back off something if it's too contrasty or too sharp or too digital. We've talked about this and shown it on stream before. So a lot of cameras, when you shoot flat, have input LUTs, which are meant to be applied before you do any other color correction, because it's going to essentially program the correct color science back into this image to give you what sort of the baseline color should be. So in this case, this I believe was shot with in Sony S-Log3. I happen to have that individual LUT right here. By the way, this was an installed LUT. I'm not sure if we ship with this one now or not. In any case, when I enable this, all right, right away now you can see a pretty significant difference in that actual shot, right? So here's the flat version. Whoops, sorry, wrong panel. Okay. And that's how it should look, and it still looks lovely. And then here it is with that LUT applied, the input LUT. Now, once that input LUT is applied, at this point, now you can begin tweaking all of your different settings. Now, again, we could start with something. Now, in this particular shot, it's probably gonna be a little bit subtle, but let's grab the white balance eyedropper, and let's find sort of a, you know, a neutral whitish gray area of her collar here, something probably right about there. And you can see that it just ever so slightly warmed things up, all right? So again, not huge difference, but you can see it pushed some of those colors a bit more into the warm hues there. Also the tint more into the greens. All right, we can undo that change. Sorry, we can, let's go ahead and just take this back to 0. So there it is before, come back in, white balance eyedrop, subtle change, all right? Sometimes it's not so subtle, right? This particular shot right here, I've shown this one a million times, but it just really illustrates the point. White balance eyedropper. We know that his Converse shoe, that's white right there. Wonderful, okay? And just restores everything back to normal. Just chatting with a random person the other day at one of my sons. My son went to a birthday party. Person starts talking to me, he's a photographer, shoots Nikon D800, so do I, D850. We're talking, is like, yeah, I love Premiere and everything, and I love Lightroom. I just wish it had a white balance eyedropper, like Aperture or something. I was talking about using like the old Apple product. And I said, yes, we do. And in Lightroom, we even have auto toning, which is really amazing, which leverages Adobe Sensei. So that in combination with the white balance eyedropper, you're probably gonna get some very good looking results in just a few clicks. Totally unaware of that, you know? So again, just kind of revealing these things. Incidentally, we also have auto toning in here, which I don't mind telling you, wink, wink, may or may not be getting a slight update in a future version of Premiere, okay? So once you adjust the white balance though, as mentioned, then at that point, you know, now we're going into the tone controls here. So again, if I were looking at this, I might adjust exposure ever so slightly, all right? And maybe we'll come in here and perhaps I'll drop the contrast a bit. You know, I don't like it quite as contrasty. Sony cameras really have that very, you know, all DSLRs and mirrorless these days, they all have their own particular look. I must admit, I'm not a huge fan of the Sony S-Log. I just don't love it. It just always seems a little too, it's just the colors, they're just pushed a little too far, a little too contrasty. There's nothing wrong with it. It's wonderful. They're amazing cameras. I just don't love the look of them particularly that much. So I always tend to soften that S-Log LUT a little bit. And again, we could make additional tweaks here if we wanted to kind of focus in on certain areas. Maybe we even punch up some of the shadows slightly. But overall, you know, this was the before. This almost looks black and white when you do it quickly. Like, what? There is color in there? And there's the after, you know, just really nice. Or we can do a global mute down here as well. So before, after. Sweet, okay? So real simple, white balance eyedropper, easy to understand, easy to use. Steve Festus Kosoboom is asking, will there be Shark Puppet? Has to be Shark Puppet Imposter, Steve, because there's already a Shark Puppet out there and I don't want him suing me, but not today, unfortunately. Oh, Paul sneaked peeks things in the new beta PS? Oh, okay. Well, if it's already in the beta, that's one thing. If he sneaked something that's not in the available beta yet, uh-oh, Paul. I wouldn't want to be you with the Photoshop team. Okay. No, just kidding. All right. We are trying to find better ways to manage our image library of 100,000 images stored on secured server, but access through portfolio with meh. There's tons of data, 8 terabytes. Okay, yeah. That's a lot. See people talking about management. Okay, Varun Kumar, I have a question. I have sometimes seen that colors look a little faded after exporting with Media Encoder. Happen with After Effects too. Can anyone help me understand? Varun, this is perfect. This actually segues into my next little setting tips and trick that I was going to talk to you about, which is exactly that. Now, we're not going to export here, but one thing that I still hear from people is, you know, sometimes when I'm grading in Premiere and I'm on, you know, a secondary monitor, whatever, looks amazing, export, play it back, it looks different right away. And it's usually a gamma issue. Now, there are known sort of gamma issues with QuickTime and exporting into H.264, but there's one other layer that you need to be aware of, which is that as of a couple years ago, we added display color management into Premiere Pro. So if you go into Preferences under General, you'll see that the 5th checkbox down here is Display Color Management. So in this case, if you've got like a P3 display or something like that, it's going to apply the correct color management to your display so that what you're seeing in the Lumetri scopes and what you're actually getting are the same, is correct. If I turn this off, I'm just going to show you the sort of the difference, all right? So if I weren't using color management and click OK, take a look at that image right now. Now, did you see what just happened? It just got a lot brighter, right? It didn't adjust any settings. It just got a lot brighter, which would probably mean now that if I didn't have that display management on, I go, oh, well, no, that's a little too sort of white now. I'd probably start coming in, maybe adjusting the white level. Maybe I would never have even adjusted exposure at all. Maybe not so much faded film, because it's not showing me the correct color for my screen. So let's undo those changes. All right, let's go back here. Let's turn it back on. I wish it actually turned on the second, but I wish you didn't have to leave the dialog. All right, turn it back on, and now it's displayed correctly. All right. So again, what was deceiving is you're looking previously, if you didn't have that checked, you were looking at scopes and going, well, it seems like this should be right. And then you'd export and it wasn't what you thought because what you were seeing isn't what you were getting. So I hope that answers your question, Varun. You want to make sure that, you know, you have that display color management enabled. I think it's enabled by default now. I don't know if it was initially, but it is now, I believe. Okay, and if it isn't, it should be. Or not, I don't know. Naveen R, when can we get audio remix option in Premiere Pro? I wish I could tell you. Wink. My son is now a litigator too. You know, it's funny, just to play off of that, Steve, you know, when kids, you know, I don't let him watch a lot of YouTube, but he watches illustration videos and stuff. And, yes, oddly enough, at 9, he's very hyper aware of, content authenticity. Let's just go with that. Pretty cool. Pretty neat. Back in our day, it was like, I used to quote Arlo Guthrie all the time, He's talking about like stealing someone's art or music or whatever. He goes, yeah, it's only stealing if you get caught, right? And there was recently that thing going around. Well, I don't remember which musical artist, Adam Levine, stood up for them like, yeah, everybody. Oh, maybe it was Dua Lipa. I can't remember. Everybody copies everybody. Well, sort of. There are exceptions, case in point, Blurred Lines, rip off, some not so much, and I don't know the Dua Lipa ones well enough to comment on those. Okay. Awesome stuff. Very cool. Okay. No, Varun, do not feel like a noob. That's a hidden option in properties. Most people are never going to find that. Okay. So let's just continue on a little bit more with basic correction and creative LUTs. Okay. So again, I just want to really showcase to you that to use the basic corrections here in conjunction with some of the creative LUTs, you can really very quickly stylize your videos and just make them look very different, very rich, very cool, with, again, the same knowledge that you have from Lightroom. So for something like this was shot in Santa Cruz. Again, always very conscious of trying not to blow out my highlights. Now, this was iPhone footage. It's 4K, but it's iPhone footage. So there's obviously going to be, certain limitations. And this is like iPhone 10. So this is quite some time ago. I'd love to see this on that new 13. If you haven't seen that new iPhone 13, Terry White pinged me the other day and he's like, you need to watch the Apple keynote now. You need to stop what you're doing and watch the Apple keynote. And I was like, okay, why? He goes, just watch the iPhone 13 Pro section. You will freak out. I don't usually freak out on those things. I mean, I'm not like a fanboy in that way. I like stuff, but whatever. It's amazing this new camera could do. And if you know what I'm talking about, this new function to be able to automatically perform rack focus after the fact. What? Unbelievable. Okay, so very quickly here, again, just leveraging a couple of sliders as I was talking, right? We've got camera exposure, and this really simulates stops of exposure in the camera. This is not merely gain up and down. So again, if you're trying to go for a slightly more moody sunset like it really was on this particular day, all right? We're still seeing we got some shadow detail, even though I'm pretty much increasing that contrast. I have adjusted the black level to bring back a little bit more of the gray there. Okay, actually desaturated. Maybe I'll just increase saturation ever so slightly. Maybe move this a little bit towards some little magenta right there. Okay, before, after. Let's go full screen again. Before. Oh, you can't do before and after with the effects mute. This is so dumb. Is Kevin in the thing today? Why does global effects mute not work in real time? That's just dumb. It lets you turn it on and off and it doesn't do anything until it's just dumb. I don't understand that at all. Works here. Anyway, a real quick before and after. Now, having tweaked this to give it kind of this, post golden hour sort of look, I'm gonna bring back the exposure there. Let's start going through some of these creative LUTs. So again, consider these like presets. Now at the top of the list here, you have your film stock emulations. You've heard me talk about these a lot. What's really wonderful about these, and you can also just scrub through them here with the arrow keys. What's really cool about these is that they definitely apply and will give your footage, video footage, a film-like aesthetic. What this means when you see Fuji something, Kodak something, it means simulating shot on Fuji 500D, printed on Kodak 2393, all right? So that's like a film stock emulation. Again, if we look at sort of before and after, there's something just really, really lovely about that. Just really, really into that shot with that particular LUT. These are also particularly useful if you're trying to, just real quickly, like do, day and night. Now you could spend a lot of time trying to achieve that yourself, It's not a complete stretch from where the original is. But again, the LUTs, that one's even actually a little bit nicer. I like that even more. The LUTs will just get you there a little bit faster. And, you know, there's a whole bunch of different ones in here. Ooh, that one's very dramatic. I like that. I mean, this is almost a little, this is that Hollywood cinema, you know, orange and teal, right? But this straight out looks straight out of like a movie poster. You know, I love the look of this. And these are just fun to play around with. A couple of things to point out here in the creative section, okay? So first and foremost, you have an intensity slider. So again, as we look at this, you know, we're starting to lose some shadow detail. I might have to come in here, maybe de-contrast things a bit. But the intensity slider will do just that. It'll apply, you know, think of this as like your wet-dry mix in audio, the intensity of that LUT on your original footage. Okay, so you can really crush the black level on here, you know, just to really go into just complete darkness. I mean, there's something very, very dramatic about that. That's actually a very cool shot. I want to also point out too here that we have this option here to export frames. So if you wanted to take a reference frame, now as I'm saying that, I'm looking up at the top here. Again, this is the problem with 8-bit footage, or in this case, 8-bit footage shot going into going into dusk, is that we've got some noise up here. So this isn't going to make for a really awesome still because I'm just seeing a lot of color noise and this would drive me crazy. You're probably not seeing it over the stream when it's zoomed out. But in any case, you can take a still and then you have several different options. You can export as DPX, JPEG, OpenEXR, PNG, Targa, or TIFF, which is most likely what you'd use, you know, especially if you were doing like a sequence of images. If you want to keep them higher fidelity, TIFF and Targa obviously are going to be your options there. All right. Really easy, though, to create a still from your footage. And by the way, because everything is shooting 4K now, more often than not, if I need to take like a production still from something, I always forget to shoot stills if I'm shooting video. I just pull it from the video here. Again, if you don't do extreme, you know, I've got this intensity at 187. We pull that back a little, we're going to have less artifacting in those areas. And actually, I mean, it's not so bad. It's better here. This was shot a little bit earlier in the day. This is another good example of one where, you know, got some slightly clipped highlights up here. We can fix that with exposure. Amazingly, though, we're still getting shadow detail here. I mean, again, I don't know how well that's coming through on stream, but I'm actually seeing leaves and things. So we can further improve that, again, just by adjusting contrast. But this is where something like some of those film stock LUTs can really reveal just some of the beauty in the colors here and just in the details. Again, it just gives it that faded film kind of look. You know, maybe even pull this, make this a little cooler, and then even add in a little bit of that green, California ocean green. Go down to the bottom here. Let's go into a vignette. Kind of stylize this. You know, I'm liking that. Something feels right about that. Feels good to me. Now, one thing that I can tell you, and we're going to come back to this in just a second, I'm going to skip ahead right now, is that I might want to just add a little bit of saturation solely in the blues section here. So this is where they're called now hue saturation curves. It's also known as our selective color curves. I'm going to use hue versus sat. Again, we're going to come back to these. What that means is it allows you to adjust the saturation of a particular hue. Which hue, you ask? Well, you need to use the eyedropper. So we're going to take the eyedropper here. I want to find kind of a balanced blue, because obviously it's not going to necessarily touch all the blues. There's a gradient involved there. But let's try to find something kind of in the middle, like this. Now, when I do that, what you're going to see is here in hue versus sat, it now gives us 3 control points. Now, the center control point is the actual hue that I selected, and then it's giving you this range on either side. By the way, I don't like working so close to the edge, so this is one of our greatest UI UX enhancements in Premiere. You can actually move the color spectrum inside the dialogue here, which is super cool. Okay, now with our center point selected, if I hold down the Shift key, because this will constrain any lateral movement, I want to, again, increase those specific colors. Hold this up. What you'll now see is that I can enhance the blues of the sky and only the blues. And you'll notice the UI here reflects that, right? Hold on, I gotta let go of this for a sec. You can see as I move up, it's more blue, and as I move down, it's going into gray, right? So if I let go, let me undo that. Once again, I can saturate the blues or desaturate just those blues, right, into gray. And like I said, this is where you can see it's not affecting all of the adjacent blue hues. If we wanted to do more affecting some of these other hues here, then we can of course expand. So in this case, maybe some of those lighter hues approaching green and yellow, we want to affect that saturation as well. I can pull this out even further, and you can see now it's actually affecting some of the reflection of the sky right here. All right, maybe this is a little extreme, okay? And similarly, what if I wanted to just kind of bring out a little bit of those browns in the mountain, just ever so slightly, a little bit more of those golden warm tones, just to give it a little bit more contrast, right? Before, hold on, let me put it back on. Before, after. All right. Very nice. The waves are now moving backwards. Okay. Super cool, super easy, very fun to use. Selective color. So we're going to come back to those. Okay. Let me just check the chat real quickly. Wow, yes, like working with channels in PS. Now, yes, of course. And, you know, again, if you look up here, we do have the traditional RGB curves. So you can still, I never use RGB curves. If anything, I use the master, if I were, again, just to kind of want to give this the classic kind of slight S pop here. I don't want to mess with the shadow contrast that much. And honestly, up here either, I kind of liked it as it is. Probably just turn those off. Yeah, that didn't do much. You can affect it that way. But yes, it's really so nice and so easy. Thank you, Jimena. Very cool. Yeah, so yeah, Z by HP, I was saying this was shot on the iPhone. Okay. All right. Rick Adams is saying he's going to go iPhone 13 just for the macro. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. All right. Okay, looks like there's no more questions around that. Okay, so let's move on to this next one here. Again, using some familiar footage from the past. Now this is going to detail using some tracking and masking for color correction. So once again, now this one specifically wants that LUT. Now, if I apply that LUT like this, that's fine. What if I actually just wanted to apply the LUT to his face, right? Okay, well, you have the ability to mask with any effect in Premiere. But more importantly, now let's go ahead and take this elliptical mask here. All right. Now we want to just get his whole face. You can add a couple additional points to kind of grab the hair. I'm not super worried about all that, but that's pretty good. And again, we could probably even dial this in a little. All right. Something like that. I'll make sure I get his neck there too, okay? You'll notice here in the effects controls panel, which by the way, we're in Lumetri in the effects controls panel. So this is all the same settings, everything that we have over here represented over here. The difference is this is where we can mask and track. So once I draw that mask, I'm now going to simply click on the track selected mask forward button, all right? Let it do its thing, take a drink. All right. Yeah, you know, talking about that new iPhone camera, it also will shoot ProRes. That's going to come in an update after the release. And I was saying to somebody, I mean, at that point, why am all my extra, like I have an old external recorder that does ProRes and DNX HD. I mean, not that iPhone replaces everything, but, oh, hold on. By the way, I sneezed 5 times. Always, except now. Like, that's probably what I'll shoot on. I love my D850. It's heavy and have to convert stuff, and it doesn't shoot ProRes. You know, this one will, which is amazing. Okay, so now what you'll see is that our face has been tracked. Even as the camera pushes in and out, look at how beautiful that mask is. But of course, if we click away, what a beautiful color job. Wonderful. Yes, you should use this all the time. Yeah, of course, no, you're not going to do that. So what can we do to combat that? Well, again, now there's a couple different hacks here. This is a unique situation based on the background color, but again, we're going to go to the mask feathering right here. And let's feather a little bit more, like that, right? Here's no feather. Here's the 10%. And let's just feather this kind of into oblivion like that. Click away. Ooh, look at that. All right. We even have a slight little glow, which you wouldn't, you know, maybe it's a little extreme right now. We can do even more on that. I'm going to show you that in a second here. But this is a good way to smooth over. There it is. That's pretty much gone. Smooth over the mask. So again, before, after. Now I'm thinking, okay, well, now I want to actually apply another instance of Lumetri, right? So we're going to layer it. So I can do it here, or I'm going to copy Lumetri Color from over here, all right? And I'm simply going to paste another instance of it. Now, right away, you're saying, okay, well, why would you do that? Because now you've got this double mask on his face. Because I'm going to invert the mask, so I can now apply that LUT, but also just apply color corrections, namely saturation and some other things, just to the background, not his face, okay? So now on this particular Lumetri layer, which by the way, let's rename background, all right? If I start to warm this up, you'll see that it warms up the background, all right? Or cool off the background, all right? Saturate that background. Once again, maybe come down here to our hue versus sat. And I've got a lot of these earth tone browns. Maybe I want them to kind of pop out a bit more. Increase saturation on those. Maybe moving this over slightly more into the orange. Okay, something like that. Let's actually come back to the face, and I'm going to warm that up ever so slightly too. Okay. A little bit of those shadows. Now again, there's more that we could do if we wanted to do individual things like on the eyes. I might actually brighten up the eyes a bit, which we could also use a mask for, and that could be a separate mask, a separate Lumetri mask that just follows the eyes. Got to be careful with that, of course, because you can make the eyes look really weird. But just real quickly here, right? Oh, let me do I have to do the global one. So there's before, there's after, right? Baking some of that color back in, before and after. Now, again, I might even on this secondary mask feather, see how there's none, right? Increasing that to really smooth that out. Maybe even do a little bit of mask expansion. No, probably not. Okay. All right. Get that back to here. Before, flat, after, double graded, tracked, and masked, okay? Again, at any point in time, you can select the masks inside of Lumetri, see what they're doing, readjust them, and make changes to your content. Super cool, super easy to do. Earth tones. Tarja, what is happening? You sensed that I was showing content from Finland, and it drew you to my stream. Welcome, dear friend. It's great to see you. Okay. So, yeah, I just love this shot. I love this dude. I don't even know who this guy is. I love his look. I love how this shot looks. You know, again, for cinematic purposes, I personally would absolutely add a vignette to this. Oh, not to that. hold on. So this is where it can get a little confusing now, right? So now I want to vignette the entire thing. I want to make sure that I'm on the background layer and apply the background to that. The vignette to that, right? Not to the face. But that's the joy of having multiple Lumetri layers. By the way, you can also enable or disable. So I could turn off the color correction on his face or turn it back on. All right. Really flexible. Okay. All right. Got 20 minutes. Okay. So we're going to go a little bit more in depth into selective color. Okay. And a couple of different reasons to use those. All right. Let's focus first. So we just saw hue versus saturation. And again, if you're looking at these curves, you're wondering, what do these things mean? Here's how you read them. All right. Adjust the saturation of a particular hue. So hue versus sat means adjust the saturation of a hue. You want to adjust the saturation of this blue sky? That's what that will do. Hue versus hue, which we're going to start with here, allows you to adjust the existing hue of a selected hue. So right now the sky is blue. What if we wanted it to be purple? Okay, that's what this one is used for. Hue versus luma, all right, allows you to adjust the luminance, right, the brightness value of a selected hue. So in the case of something like this would actually be a great shot to use hue versus luma, right? Let's say we didn't want to, we like the saturation that we've done on that blue sky. Let's say we want to make it even slightly more dramatic by darkening that blue, right? So we want to affect the luminance of that blue range. Eyedropper. Okay, come in here. And now when I select this, remember it shows you kind of a graphical rendition of what it's doing. When I click on this, note that up at the top, it's going closer to white, showing you that if I raise this, it's going to brighten that bluish hue. If I go south, if I drag it down, it's going to darken that particular hue, all right? Once you understand what these things mean, it's actually really simple to use them. I must admit, when we first got these happening, I was like, well, I don't even know what this means, because I didn't know how to read these, right? Once you understand it, it's pretty simple. So again, if I wanted to make it a little bit more dramatic and darken those blues, right? Showing you very, very extreme into like almost black. That's a little too much. Once again, this is our limitations of 8-bit. It gets real noisy and gross looking up there. But just to add a little bit of drama, very, very nice, okay? And similarly, look, if I wanted to say take this hue right there, which is currently yellow, and add a little pink, or a little green, or maybe more blue. I probably need to expand our selection a little bit here because, again, we're not getting enough of the adjacent colors there, and it's kind of getting a weird sort of look, all right? But you can see how very quickly now we can start to individually treat different parts of this image and bring out different colors and different hues selectively, hence selective color, okay? So in the case of this, let's change the hue altogether, right? Let's take a selection of this sky. This was shot in Los Angeles at Adobe Max. No, I'm sorry. This was San Diego. This was 2016 Adobe Max in San Diego. So remember, hue versus sat, hue versus luma showed you, more saturated, less saturated, brighter, darker. What do you suppose hue versus hue shows you? Again, we just looked at it a second ago. It's going to give you the spectrum of color. So as you go up, blue, cyan, green, yellow, orange, down, dark blue, magenta, purple, red, orange, etc., right? So changing this sky is as simple as just doing this, right? Normally I would constrain my my motion with the shift key as well, okay? And notice it doesn't affect any of these colors because there's none of that blue in there. Now, did it affect this color range here? Yes, because we were getting reflection in the glass from the sky. Again, this shot was also at sunset, so this is iPhone. This might even be iPhone 6. I don't even know if I have my iPhone 10 yet. So just a lot of unfortunately a lot of noise in here. This is where my favorite noise reduction, Neat Noise Reduction, does a wonderful job on this. But I mean, real quickly, right? Super, super simple. You know, we could make it anything, right? You could have it change over time if you want. This is an even easier one here. So we've got like the sun up here. Okay, maybe we want to change the color of that sun. Maybe we want to make it even more yellow, right? Do a couple of things. So how would we do it? What if we wanted to just make the sun more yellow? Now, mind you, again, got that same yellow over here on the tentacles. Got that same yellow right here. There's also a slightly yellowish hue to this whole shot. So it might affect other colors, but let's start. Hue versus sat, right? If I want to add more saturation to that yellow, hue versus sat. Take my eyedropper. Fortunately, this is all very much the same. Okay, oh, it actually pulled up more of a red. That's not what I want. How did it do that? That totally missed. Okay, let's try this now. Interesting. Is there anything on this clip? I'm going to try applying that LUT. There we go. Let's see if that's why it was, I think it was off. There we go. Okay. Good little tip there. Flat footage. It's trying to detect these particular hues, but because it was flat, it didn't have that S-Log3 LUT. It wasn't interpreting the colors correctly, and it was giving us like a selection of red that wasn't correct. Put the LUT on, now it immediately selected the right color, okay? So in this case, let's go ahead and saturate that yellow, and you can see it just pops out of the screen now, right? It's also accentuating some of the, again, sunlight hue coming through the window there, right? But real quickly, you know, before, flat, after, vibrant sun. Now, taking that a step further, you know what? I don't want that sun to be yellow. I want it to be orange or green or pink or whatever. You get the idea, right? And again, remember that, you know, whatever the surrounding adjacent colors that might be shared, they too will ultimately be affected by this. So you have to be mindful of that. In this case, we could narrow the selection. See, as we widen it, more of that wall starts to get bluer and bluer. As we narrow this, it's actually doing a bit less, which is even nicer, okay? Before, after, okay? So if you've ever tried to do that, again, if you've done this in Photoshop a million times for sure, now you know how to do it in video. Same thing if we wanted to increase some of those purplish hues, right, in our little octopus or squid or whatever that dude is. Come over here. All right. Oh, sorry, I was doing hue versus hue. That's fine. Change the hue, all right? Just like that. Or if we were talking saturation, saturate this guy right here. All right. Desaturate, saturate. Okay? For after. Okay. And again, that LUT is kind of intense. This is where I might choose one of those film stock ones to add a little of that sort of softer contrast, faded film aesthetic that I personally like. Again, noisy because this is an H.264 copy. Okay. All right. So that's hue versus hue, hue versus sat, hue versus luma, luma versus sat, and sat versus sat. Sat versus sat, I still really don't understand how that works. That's largely used in broadcast. Adjust the saturation of a particular luminance value. Very specific color grading needs for that. We're not going to cover that one today. You can watch some of the other color grading videos where I talk about that stuff. Okay. All right. So just to recap real quickly, just checking here in the chat. Carlos, how to make Lumetri faster? My system slows down a lot, especially with more than one Lumetri effect, despite being quite powerful. Carlos, that's shocking because, to be honest, Lumetri is pretty optimized and has been for a while. So, I mean, this is a 4.5, almost a 5-year-old machine, and I'm running this combo of 4K and 2K media. And you can see I'm playing full frame, you know, without dropping frames, certainly in forward position. So I don't know. There could be other factors going on, but Lumetri is pretty light. It's pretty light for the most part. If you're using older color effects like the 3-way color corrector, yes, super heavy, fast color, super heavy. Lumetri really isn't. I have to say, for the most part, there are some things in Premiere that are heavy, and I'll tell you about them. Lumetri is not one of them. So it might be something else that's happening. Maybe it's a scratch disk, a cache disk issue. Maybe it's just allotted memory to Premiere in general. Maybe you're not using GPU acceleration. So just to answer to that, in terms of performance, if you go into your project settings, general, okay, under the file menu, on Windows, I think it's in the edit menu, or maybe it's in the Premiere menu. All right. Under renderer, the default is, in this case, because I'm on Mac, it's going to try and use Metal for GPU acceleration. If you're using software only, then yes, playback, especially with more than one Lumetri, will be extremely slow because it's not leveraging GPU acceleration. Lumetri is GPU accelerated by default. It wants to take advantage of your GPU. So if you're in software only, try some form of GPU acceleration. Again, on Windows, you'll have a couple of different options. If you have an NVIDIA card, you might also see CUDA acceleration available to you. I highly recommend that. Additionally, it could also be the formats that you're working with. Like I mentioned, these are actually some QuickTime movies, albeit in H.264. If you're using just like MP4s or H.265 media, also pretty heavy to decode on playback. So there's an opportunity to either maybe try, you could also convert into another file format, something like ProRes or Cineform, which are really more optimized for editing and working while editing, as opposed to compressed formats like H.264, H.265, and the like. Okay. Yes. Okay. Very cool. Oh, and Tim just said the exact same thing. There you go. Very good. Okay. That's funny. Everybody's chiming in. All following behind. Okay. Very good. All right. So one last thing I wanted to showcase here. This was just a fun shot. I found this, totally forgot about this while I was looking for content today. So this was, it's Brian May right there. So a couple years ago, here, I'll just play this. I have the sound off, because I don't want this to get flagged or anything. So really fortunate, a couple years ago. Oh, and it's, I don't know, it's 4K, but it's 4K vertical, so I have to render this. There you go, Carlos. So 4K vertical, to see it full quality, I have to render it in the timeline. And there's no effects on it. It's just, whatever. Okay. So, fortunate to see Queen when they did their tour a couple years ago. And as you can see, I was in the front row here, so it's pretty amazing. Actually, and I talked about this, I think, on stream years ago. I think this was 2016. I don't even remember. One of the shots that I took of Adam Lambert wound up being recirculated on the AP wire, which was really cool. It was an interesting shot. It involved some grabbing of some parts on his body, but it was a beautiful shot, if I do say so myself. And it was iPhone. This is iPhone, right? I'm sorry I shot this vertically, but he was right there and I wanted to get his whole body. So what I wanted to do here was, one, just kind of showcase that, again, treating content like this, which is, look, very dark, silhouetted. There's still a lot of detail in here. And if we go into 100%, you'll actually see as this plays through, all right, that, there's some decent sharpness. There's some decent stuff happening in here, which means that if we apply filters to it, we can actually get this looking pretty good, okay? Now, hold on a second. What is this doing? It's weird. Okay. So initially I thought, all right, well, let's see if we can, what we can do with LUTs. So I just started clicking through different LUTs like this one here. Okay, that's kind of cool. It brought out a little bit more detail. Again, if we go into like 100%, there's some pretty good focus right here. You can see individual hairs. You can see the dials on the guitar, the knobs and everything. It's actually coming through pretty clearly, which was a bit shocking, all right? But this was really, ideally, there's just not a lot of color here because he was spotlighted, right? So there's just not a lot. You're seeing some of the red of the stage, whatnot. So, I started playing around with contrast. Wasn't really doing what I wanted it to do. Lowering it a little kind of brought back a little bit of detail. Again, adjusting the black level, nah, that didn't do it at all. Continue to kind of go through LUTs. And then I started landing on some of the, oh, this one actually is sort of cool. I like this one. So this is, again, Codec 5205, Fuji 3510. Just render this real fast. You can see it renders very, very quickly. It's only 9 seconds. Okay. And, you know, forgive my shaky hand here. But, you know, there's some good detail in this. There really is. And it looks pretty sweet. But I was finding that all the color ones kind of gave it this softer edge that I didn't like. So then I landed on some of the black and white ones. And suddenly, remember I was talking before about, you know, pulling stills? You know, this is a great example of that. I mean, look, there's just, look at the like amazing detail like that it captured on his pants right here. You know, and this is me and the shoes. It's like incredible shadow detail in the shoes. And you got to remember, this is me, you know, handheld from, you know, I don't know how many feet below Brian May I was there, but pretty sweet, okay? And just done with a LUT and a couple of really simple adjustments here. I point this out because this is a great opportunity, again, to leverage that export frame. So I could take this, say, and create a TIFF from this. Let's stick this on the desktop, all right? Something like that. And maybe move into another position. You know, I was trying to get some different facial expressions, all right? Checking for sharpness. Okay, TIFF. And if I pull up my desktop here, all right, got a couple of nice stills. Okay, and just paying attention to the shot. A little bit of motion blur on the headstock right there, so I could probably advance a frame and find a better one. But you know, sourced from video, treated with video color, exported as a TIFF still. And now if I take this into Photoshop or into Lightroom, you know, now I can begin to do more. I can use some of the AI-based sharpening, maybe just, I mean, there's already great sharpness, again, in the guitar and stuff here. I'm consistently shocked and amazed at how good. I'd probably do a little bit of crop on this and just be able to pull some really nice stills from what was ultimately 4K iPhone 10 footage, all right? Or it could have even been iPhone 6. I don't remember now at this point. I don't even remember when this concert was, 2016 or 2015. Rick Beato just did, yes, I saw it. I saw that Z by HP. I love Rick. He's super cool. Yes. Paula O'Brien, that's an awesome feature. I need to try this weekend on some of my concert videos. Yes, that's the thing, you know, and by the way, I also want to point out, I'm not that dude. I do not film at concerts more than I watch them, but you know, it's a big stage. We were kind of right of center. So when he came up that close, I mean, I couldn't resist. You're soloing for me. He made eye contact a few times. I didn't catch it in this video, unfortunately, but it was pretty cool. But you know how that is, you know. But I just want to point out, I'm not that dude. I am there listening. I'm also wearing, what are they called? I'm trying to say earbuds, ear protectors, earplugs. Thank you. Oh my goodness. I was going to tweet out yesterday, you know you're old when, or you know you're getting old. I'm old. I'm not getting old. I'm old. You know you're old when it's only been 5 days and you realize you need to revisit your nose hair trimmer. Think on that, kids. You also know you're old when you're trying to say something you can't think of basic words. But I digress. Yeah. Paul O'Brien. Yeah, not too cool to constantly film photo, but if you're that close, you have to. Exactly. And I wasn't blocking anybody's view. That's the other thing. Right there. Plenty of people behind me. Yes. Sometimes you got to take the shot. Everybody agrees. Thank you. Carlos, is the input LUT applied before while creative LUTs, after base correction. Just thinking about it in a node structure kind of way, and how easily to add, remove LUTs from the menu. Adding, removing from the menu is not super easy unless you go into the package contents. You can always add or browse to add new ones. Unfortunately, they don't stay in the menu. So you can add them always, but they don't stay in here. They'll stay in the project, but they're not accessible to every other subsequent project. So if you want to get them into those menus permanently, that's done by actually going into I almost said the exe, but yes. But I'm not going to show you that today. Okay, friends, that's all the time we have. Sorry, got to go. Stay tuned for the Illustrator Daily Creative Challenge. See you next week or 2 weeks from now. Bye-bye.